Jenny, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking water. I don't know if you remember. I'm having a baby here in a few months.
Absolutely. I'm drinking carbonated water and I'm not having a baby. So, I mean, well, and actually, I do remember, and I will tell you this. Now, it's only because we're calling it a budding friendship.
Okay.
It took so much self-control because you don't want to like cross lines, but like the person the what I think is funny inside of my head
Mm-hmm.
is if I photoshopped my a tiny little version of my head onto the child that you currently have. Now,
Uh-huh.
me, I think that's really funny, but then at the same time, not knowing you super well or your husband, I thought I'm like, you know what? I'm just not gonna do that. But anyway,
He would have definitely thought it was funny as well.
I don't want to be like crossing any lines here, but well, listen, Jenny, it sounds like our audio. Yes, and there's a running joke. It may have been from one of the first live streams that I did, Jenny, when I mentioned having 6 children, and somebody in the chat said, Adam makes beer, more like Adam makes babies. So that is that's a little thing from the chat that popped up there. Hey chat, welcome everybody. It's good to see so many of those familiar names popping in here. If you have been around for the industry pro interview conversation good time live stream, that is the official title. You know that sometimes I just get so much wrapped up in the conversation. I'm not always super good at keeping an eye on the chat, but please do drop those questions in there. I had a couple of questions come up that that I'll try to fit in here today into our conversation. But before we go too much further, this is Adam Makes Beer. My name is Adam. And as I just mentioned, this is June 2023 Industry Pro live stream. And today we're going to be talking to Jenny Reed from 50 West, brewer at 50 West. But before we get into the interview, let's talk about my wonderful sponsor. Blickman Engineering has been the pioneer of nano brewing, and they have helped hundreds of successful breweries achieve their dreams since they started with 1-barrel systems in 2006. Now offering a full suite of brew houses up to 15-barrel skidded and insulated, matching cellaring equipment, keg washers, grain mills, and more, sized specifically for the nano brewer. Blickman Pro brewing systems are competitively priced without sacrificing quality, and the simple design and factory direct support from our brewing experts gets you up and running faster than anything else on the market. When you're ready to go pro or just kicking the tires, be sure to reach out to them for expert advice and a partner to help you through it all. Turn your dreams into a reality by reaching out to Phil, Tom, or Josh at Pro Series at blickmanengineering.com. Again, that's Pro Series at blickmanengineering.com. Blickman Engineering Pro Brewing is proud to be the equipment sponsor for this channel and is committed to helping every brewer, no matter where they are in their journey. Jenny, I feel like a real pro when I read that.
You sound really good doing it.
So the funny thing is there's a dear friend of mine that is always he watches all the live streams. After a lot of them, he's a brewer friend of mine. We'll jump on and we'll talk beer or just catch up on life after these live streams. And we had a conversation a few weeks ago about how he did a radio interview once, and he went into the studio, met the host guy, and they were talking. Everything was normal. But then as soon as they went live, the guy was talking like this. And he said there was like no warning. or anything like that. So now when I do that live read, this is what I think is going to happen. Is like, I don't want to be monotone, but I also don't want to be like insane radio voice. But anyhow, well, listen, everybody, Jenny was, I was mentioning before, I don't know if we were live or not at that point, but most of the people that you have, every person that I have done a brewer interview with is somebody that I've known for pretty much about 10 years, and they're dear friends and everything like that. And I have met Jenny through us doing collabs with 50 West over the last few years between Cartridge and 50 West. We do the Sip Trip collaboration where, obviously we collab on a beer. We share a bike trail, and we have like a thing between them and whatnot. So I've gotten to know Ryan over there at 50 West, and he's, the first time we went over to 50 to brew, he was talking up this brewer at, is it pronounced Chillicothe? Because I'm new to the...
Yeah, Chillicothe.
Chillicothe. He is talking about this brewer that they have over at Chillicothe named Jenny, who he couldn't say enough positive things about you. And then we ended up meeting this past year for Sip Trip Volume 3 and had a chance to chat a little bit. And yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate you being willing to talk to me tonight.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So you have, I think, and it might sound silly, but I feel like a lot of people get into the industry by, maybe they were working front of house and they had interest in getting back into the brewery, or they were home brewing and then kind of got their foot in the door with a brewery. You ended up going the education route, and not only that, but you went to one of the more prestigious places here in the U.S. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your educational experience?
Yeah, well, I started a little bit later than a lot of people do in this industry. I didn't really start going this route until I was in my 30s already.
Okay.
So it really all started because my dad and me and my brother are super into craft beer. So like we would take trips just to go try craft beer from different places.
Sure.
And it's like one day we're like, we should just try it just for fun. So for a couple of years, we started doing some homebrew in our, it's actually my dad's driveway, I guess. So we just hang out. And of course, first few times you homebrew, it's like 12-hour process. You're hanging out in your driveway.
Yeah.
And then I just loved it.
So when you were homebrewing, was it like a turkey fryer outside?
Yeah, igloo coolers and turkey fryers.
Igloo cooler and turkey fryer. Heck yeah, man. That's a sweet way to do it. I when I was homebrewing, I still, the whole time, I only brewed in our kitchen with my wife. So we lived in that house for close to 20 years. When we sold that house, I still think that there is some black scarring from a boil over on that white porcelain surface that you can't quite get off. So what was that homebrew rig like? So you had the igloo cooler, you had the turkey fryer.
Yeah, we had 2 igloo coolers. So we had the hot liquor tank igloo cooler and then the mash tun with the little false bottom. So, and then we rigged up some like steps so it would gravity feed. Like we really did a lot with it, but it was fun. I mean, you got what you got out of that. You don't really get to regulate much. What
did you have going on the fermentation side as far as fermentation vessel, temperature control, anything?
We did not really have any temperature control. We put it in my dad's basement in a 5-gallon bucket with a little airlock on it. I mean, it was very rudimentary, I guess.
Heck yeah.
So some of it was good, some of it was not fit to drink, and you wasted your whole day plus a few weeks trying to ferment it. But
do you remember the first beer that was it? So it was the 3 of you, dad and brother?
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing, by the way. Just to say, I love I love that it was the 3 of you doing that.
Yeah, the first thing we did like an out of the box extract kit because we were just trying to make sure everything was working properly. It was like, I don't want to spend a bunch of time doing all grain if it's not going to work at all.
Yeah.
So we did a amber ale.
Yeah.
Turned out fine.
I did an English ale. I had the English ale box. So you had amber ale. All right. Yep.
And everyone's like, did you like it? I was like, I'm not a huge amber ale person, but it tasted fine.
It was my first batch was identifiable as beer.
Yeah.
It was also oxidized, and my palate was so uninformed at that time for me to taste oxidation in that beer. It had to be horribly oxidized. But you know what I mean? But yeah, that's a cool thing. And so you started doing some home brewing with the fam. And that's cool. And so, but you were mentioning that you didn't get into the beer side of thing until your 30s. What was going on with your 20s, career wise?
Well, I started out in my 20s. I was doing freshwater mussel research for Ohio State University. It was a grant funded position, and it was one of those things every year. It was just a battle of whether I was going to get my grant refunded. So I ended up going and getting a job at Ohio University in the bursar's office. So I did student loan collections at the bursar's office. So
does that sounds rough? Is that rough?
It was not fun. I had a lot of students tell me that I was ruining their lives, and it didn't take me long to realize I didn't want to do that forever.
If we haven't known each other for very long, but sometimes I feel like I laugh inappropriately. And this is, you have to take my laughter with a grain of salt on this. I'm laughing at how difficult of a situation that had to be, because that can't be a good feeling.
No, you don't ever really want to hear somebody say that. So I mean, I loved working there. Ohio University was a great place to work.
Sure.
But I just didn't want to do collections. It just wasn't my thing. After, working as a freshwater mussel, I was out in like creeks and rivers all the time. So I was outside. I wasn't stuck to a desk.
Yeah.
And then I moved offices to get away from that and did some like budgeting stuff there for a while. And I was like, I still just don't like being inside, sitting at a desk all the time. It's not what I want to do forever.
Sure.
So when I was 30, I was married, but I didn't have any kids yet. I was like, if I'm going to make this switch that I really want to do to this, passion that I have for brewing, I need to do it now. So I did some research of like different schools and different things that I was actually qualified for. And I found UC Davis. I talked to some of the people that had been there before. I just thought it was going to be a really good experience. So I applied. I did get put on the wait list because there's a lot of students that try to go in there a lot. So once I got in, I was like, all right, I gotta go. I gotta do this. This is something I want to do, because I was 30. I think I was 30 at the time that I got in.
Okay.
And being a female in our industry, there's not as many of them. And I live in Southern Ohio. Like,
sure,
there's not a lot of breweries in my area. So really, we have a few in Athens. We have one in Jackson, and now we have two in Chillicothe. Those are the closest places, and those are still like 30 to 40 minutes away from where I live. So it's like,
sure,
I need to feel confident going in there, telling these people that this is what I want to do. I'm committed to it, and having some like knowledge behind it, I felt like was really, really going to help. So I wanted to make sure I was ready for the commitment and showing that this is really what I wanted to do. So
sure. And I think there is something too, and without sounding ageist, there is something about like, I mean, you made an adult decision, you made an adult move, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes I feel like, I mean, I don't know about you going into college, but I think I had 3 or 4 different majors. I mean, I know I like wanted to work with kids and help kids. But I mean, that can come in many different forms, right? And so, when you're young and you're making decisions, I mean, shoot, I ended up, I taught history, high school, at-risk kids, high school aged for the first 10 years of my career. And, but I ended up becoming, I was a history major, and then had my education. It was basically like a certification that was tacked on. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I picked history because I had to pick a major, Like it was at the end of my sophomore year, and I was as close to that as I was anything else.
Yeah.
And I just had a great history class. And so that was, you know what I mean? So like in your situation, you've been in the workforce and you're making a substantial decision. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that says something. And so now, how many years have you been brewing professionally?
It's almost 4 now. So
Almost 4.
I started right before COVID, which might have been the worst possible time to make that transition. I started in the January 2020. So I think I worked for like 3 months before the world shut down.
Yeah. Yeah. I got in. Well, I decided to move my family 6 hours away in August of 2020 to help start a new brewery. So yeah, we can feel some of that together a little bit. Those are uncertain times for I mean, obviously so many of us. And I mean, especially on that hospitality side, you know, because we had weird, well, and because I mean, I'm not trying to say that restaurant brewery industry was any different for you know, as far as the pandemic went. But the strange thing with our industry is we tried to pretend to be open, like on the restaurant front, like back in Michigan, and our lockdown stuff was I believe tighter, but they would say restaurants can open to 25% capacity. Okay. And it's like, well, you still need 100% of the kitchen staff. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like things get tricky. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And so it's just weird times. But yeah, so you got in right when everything kind of clamped down. That's wild.
Yeah, it definitely was. So since I was commuting back and forth between southeastern Ohio and Cincinnati like 3 days a week, there for about a month, I think I just didn't go in to work at all. Yeah. And then I came back and I was having a baby, my first baby. So it actually worked out really well because the Chillicothe renovation essentially got put on hold because of all of the like supply chain stuff. Sure. So like getting the elevator in the new building and all of the equipment and all that stuff just kind of stopped during all of that. The construction kind of stopped because we were supposed to open in like March or April of 2020, and we didn't end up opening until January of 2021. So I had my son Christmas Eve of 2020, and then I came back in March, and then we started brewing at the Chillicothe location in April. Okay. It actually worked out really nicely because we weren't ready to brew there until right after I got back. So sure. Even though I didn't plan it, I couldn't have planned it better, essentially. So sure. So you went straight from did you go straight from graduating UC Davis to working for 50 West? My actual first time brewer's job, yes. But I interned at Little Fish with Sean over there in Athens. Nice. I was trying to think when I started there, maybe like August. Yeah. And then I worked with him until I started my actual job in January. And since I was only part-time at 50 West, I still went over maybe 1 day a week and like cleaned kegs and hung out and just kind of helped where I could. Bottling days, I'd help him. Yeah. Fruit processing days because he does a lot of sours and barrels. So yeah, it was great experience. He's a great brewer. Learned a lot there. So very cool. We need those people, right? I'm such a big believer in that. I think, and maybe it's not industry specific, but I do think I don't know. I feel like we owe it to each other on some level, right? Absolutely. And this industry is so open and friendly for the most part. Like everyone likes to collab. Everyone likes to share the information they have. Like it's just a nice industry to be in. It's true. It's true. Well, I'm jumping a little bit ahead here because we're starting to roll from school into work. So let's jump back to the school stuff a little bit. Why did you end up choosing UC Davis? Because there's other schools out there. Well, it fit with what I wanted. It was a good school and it was only 6 months. So having a husband, having a house and all that, like I had to give up my income and give up, living with my husband essentially, because he stayed here and worked. So I knew it was only 6 months. So I moved to California from January until July.
That's wild. How, like, and you don't have to get super personal. That had to be challenging.
It definitely was. I will say that the school was so intensive. Like you woke up in the morning, went to school, you were there till 5 o'clock. Then you had to pretty much go home and do classwork or whatever kind of studying you needed to do.
Yep.
So it kept me very busy. So I think that helped with that. Sure. But it was definitely different because I had never lived more than like 2 hours away from where I grew up. I went to school in Columbus.
Okay.
But that was the furthest I'd ever lived away from everybody that I knew. So I moved out to California and didn't really know anybody. I roomed with a girl that I went to school with. But there was 10 years age difference between me and my roommate too.
How many?
10 years.
10 years. Yeah, that's a little bit of a difference,
Yeah, for sure. So she had just graduated college and I was like, yeah, I graduated college 10 years ago.
So the program fit, and so it was a 6-month, pretty intense thing. I mean, there's obviously some big names teaching over there. When we talked before, I believe, there's Dr. Bamforth is over there. Dr. Lewis is over there, but they may have been gone by the time you were there.
Dr. Lewis was gone. I had Bamforth his last year there before he went over to Sierra Nevada.
Yeah, I could listen to him read the phone book.
Oh, he was amazing. I mean, everything he said just sounded even better because of his accent. It's like, I'll never get tired of hearing you talk.
Sure. And, he still has one of my favorite. I remember, I don't know if you're familiar with the podcast, The Brewing Network, but they started releasing stuff back in 2005. And that's where I got a ton of my brewing knowledge from them interviewing industry pros and stuff, and even folks on the homebrew side for that matter. And I remember they interviewed Charlie. They had him on a few times. And he talked about when he was working for, one of the light lager companies, mass-produced light lager, and he always says gently flavored beer. It's a gently flavored lager. Yeah. I always like that because, first of all, I think it's hilarious because you know how people, especially on our side of the industry, tend to talk about those beers. So I love the fine point that it puts on it without anyways, that always cracks me up.
He always had extreme opinions on different beer styles. If you did anything hazy, he's like, I'm not drinking this chicken soup.
Yeah.
This is not what I want. This is not beer. He said, I worked so many years to get my beer as clear as possible. Why would I do this?
Well, and then what was I've also heard him talk about that. Yeah, because I mean, for a lot of it, I mean, yeah, he was helping in the production of gently flavored lagers, and he was talking about clarity issues at one point, and he used the term fluffy bottoms, where they would get the beer into the can or into the bottle. And somewhere along the lines in the process, they would end up with like a fluffy sediment that would settle out at the bottom of the can. Or a bottle or whatever, but yeah, fluffy bottoms. That's another one that sticks in my head with him.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, Davis is known for having really really big names out there. So, I mean, if you could, I get questions all the time about whether or not somebody should pursue school or anything like that as far as getting into the industry. Could you share like just what the experience was like for you? Just for a minute, because I think that there's going to be people that will listen to this and just want to know, well, okay, if I do get accepted to that program, what should I be expecting?
In regards to the program, I mean, it is very, very intensive. You wake up every morning and you go in at 8, I think it was started, and you're there until 5 o'clock. And it is constant lectures. You take quizzes almost every day on different subjects. They do have a sensory program, which was really helpful, I think, because coming from just a homebrew aspect, I was kind of like you, like something might be wrong with this beer. Could not tell you what it was. Like, so they have the sensory kits, and you do that like once a week for the different kind of sensory programs. Very yeast intensive as well. We have, classes that you just concentrated on all the different kinds of yeast, all of the different, infections that you can get, where they're from. So to me, it was really important to have all of that, because coming from a couple years of homebrew, I was not prepared to go anywhere and brew on my own.
Sure.
So I think for me at my stage, I wasn't going to be able to like learn all of that from just brewing experience, like hands-on. Sure. However, I also think if I didn't have somebody like Ryan and Scott and Sean show me the ropes of brewing, just because I have this degree doesn't mean I could just start my own place and brew. Like, that's not really realistic either.
I think yeah, I'm sorry, continue.
I say the only thing that I think I didn't get covered in my brewing program that I wish I had is more like recipe development. We only had 2 weeks in an actual brewery out of the 6 months that I was there.
I think that's the hardest thing. I mean, because for me, and so this is my arc in learning how to recipe develop. When I was, let me see. All right, it's not right here. It's not a book on my shelf right now. It's actually at work because I still use it. When I was homebrewing, I would only brew recipes from the book called Brewing Classic Styles by John Palmer and Jamil Zainasheff. And I will say this: I think you can take those recipes with the exception of a few things, American IPA, some of the sour beer approaches in there. There's a couple of things that have been updated technique wise over time.
Sure.
But you can take those historical styles in there, scale them up and brew them, and damn if you're not almost in the pocket for what that beer style is supposed to be. Like it's really a good guide. I learned to recipe develop by brewing those recipes and figuring out how he builds flavor with stuff. Like I always say, like, instead of reading that like a recipe book, I got to the point to where I was reading it like a story.
Yeah.
Right. So you could look at how he's making German beer and you can see common themes, or in a style where you want to build up kind of a toasty, not quite roasty profile in it.
Yeah.
And you can see how he does those things. And so, I mean, that's almost everything I brewed at home. Yeah. And then it's just your own back catalog once you start brewing something, right? So
absolutely. You definitely go back to the things that really worked for you and just kind of tweak those after you get a little bit underneath your, in your pocket, I guess.
Sure. Do you ever taste something that you have on tap and then riff off of that? Like make tweaks off of something else? So
yeah,
like for instance, that's the primary way that I judge balance with IPA now. Okay. Is because I feel like with the calculations, especially because we have some IPAs where if I'm dropping the whirlpool temperature down to 170, I have a rough, I mean, I might have a guesstimate about what's going to come out of that from a balance standpoint, but it's not like you're punching that into a calculator and getting like a super hardcore number off of it. So like, I will go out and taste another beer that I whirlpooled down at 170, and then I'll look at those volumes and kind of tweak from there a little bit, right?
Absolutely. You just kind of see, and I think that with all the hops that I use, especially when you're like combining different dry hops, there's certain dry hops that just overtake your whole thing. And I'm like, I wasted this other one because I can't even taste it. So it's like trial and error, essentially. Like I've dry hop stuff with Sabro before, as everybody knows. You only do that one time because whatever you dry hop with it, you can't taste it unless you do like half Sabro and the rest. So.
Yeah. So, before I take us too far away from school, I mean, what was really, I mean, if you had to think of one or a couple of things that were really the thing that you are most grateful for with that experience at Davis?
I think now, like being 3 years into the industry, essentially running my own brew pub, the thing I'm most grateful for is when something goes wrong, I know what's going on. Like I have a fix for it. I'm able to determine. Whereas like, I think if I had just went in and learned the process and not learned the science behind it, I might not really know what I did to mess up my beer. So like, and like, I don't know, all of the science, like the amylase and, all of the components of the enzymes that break down, like if I would have accidentally brewed too hot or mashed too hot or something like that, it's like, I wouldn't have known what I was doing wrong and why it didn't work. So I think that's one of the things, like actually learning what is happening during this brewing process, not just that it works. So I think that whenever I was home brewing, I was like, this is what the recipe said to do. It worked. I got the right amount of sugars out of it.
Yeah.
But, I also, of course, with homebrew, you could accidentally mash a lot hotter. The first time I was doing it, my probe, like it was in the grain, so it was like saying one temperature, which it was not that temperature. So I mashed way too hot. It was nowhere close to what I thought I was gonna get, and I was like, I have no idea why. So it's like you do eventually learn that stuff, but I feel like having that formal education, hearing and that's the other thing, you hear stories from these teachers that you have, and they had people come in like. We had Vinny come in and do a presentation. We had Ken Grossman come in and do a presentation.
That's awesome.
Our classroom was right there with Sudworks, so their brewers came in and did stuff. So a lot of local people that have breweries out there, which they're everywhere out in that area. It was just really, really nice, not only to hear their stories about how they opened places and like all of the trials and tribulations they essentially went through, but they told stories about why things didn't work or how things didn't work. And it's like, you almost learn more from the things that didn't work out than from the things that did. Because if it just works, it's like, all right, that was good. But if you have an issue, then you know what to do the next time and not have that same issue.
Yeah. And that's always kind of what most of the people that I have worked with are, they don't have any background at all. Maybe they've homebrewed, but they've never. But even that's minimal. Most of my people are completely new to making beer, and I think there's some real benefits to that in some ways. Because you don't have to worry about, and sometimes you say it and it might sound wrong, but or it might sound like big-headed, but you don't want people coming in with bad habits.
Absolutely.
And not that I'm the flawless brewer or anything like that, but I try to learn, I try to grow, I try to stay current. And for some people, it's just a job. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And it's a job where there's free beer after work, and it's like a scene. You know what I mean? And it's. It's kind of like this connection to like bar life or something, except you're one of the people that makes it.
Yeah, it's a fun job to say you have. You can go around and say, I make beer for a living. And people think it's really, really cool.
It's true. It's true. I always, because it's not a joke, but I mean, I taught at-risk kids for 10 years and nobody ever wanted to interview me. I made one batch of beer professionally, and the local paper wants to interview me. It's an interesting twist, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So
but I definitely think there is an aspect of that, like, and I hope I didn't come off as when I went in with Ryan, like I still pretty much said, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I know the science behind the process, but when I came to go, learn from him, I learned a lot because it was something completely new in regards to professional big batch brewing.
Yeah.
I had tried to use some of the stuff in my homebrew setting, but I would say I wouldn't be where I am now without all of the information and knowledge I've gained from Ryan. He was a great asset to me.
Definitely.
And I'm very, very thankful for it.
And, you know, it's, I don't know. That's just, yeah, I think that's so cool. And there is that bridge. So I remember one of the people that I trained into the industry. It was my buddy Andy. He was on and talked about hazy IPA. We did an interview with him on hazy, which if you haven't watched, I'm not telling you, Jenny, even though what I'm about to say is true. If you have not watched the chat that I had with Andy, the full video is in the live stream portion of the playlist, but it's really worthwhile. Andy's very, very thorough, and even if the way he's doing hazy is not exactly how you want to be doing it, it's so valuable to see behind the scenes with somebody else and to hear their thought process and talk through their full actual process. It's just great stuff. So that one is with Andy Gallagher from Linwood Brewing when we talked hazy. So definitely check that out. But so what was the thing about Davis that you found out, but you had no idea it was going to be like that? Like, what was the big surprise going to Davis? Because maybe like I'm one of those people, and I see my 12-year-old do it. And when we have friends coming over to the house, he's pacing, he's nervous, he's looking out the window. Like you would almost expect he's expecting us to get robbed, but really he's just so excited that his friends are coming over that he's all wound up. And I do the same thing. And I always think, well, even like I went to CBC, and I'm always thinking, well, what's it gonna be like when I'm there?
Yeah.
And like yeah. So, I mean, did you have kind of that thing going into it where you're kind of wondering what the whole thing was going to be like, and then there was something about the experience that surprised you or anything like that?
I mean, I talked to quite a few people that had been to the program, so I kind of knew what to expect, like school-wise. So, I mean, the only thing that I wasn't really expecting, we had an engineering part of this too.
Okay.
Which was not my strong suit. No, I was always like, I'm good at math. I was always like, this won't be hard.
Sure.
Oh my goodness. All of the things about all of the pumps and the equipment and that stuff.
Yeah.
It was a lot. So that part was very it was good. I had got a lot of good information. I was a lot more prepared when I went into places to see all this equipment.
Sure.
But that was a little bit surprising to me. And then I guess also like the brewing part with Charlie Banforth, I was expecting all that, all the processes and, the things that you did to retain foam, head retention, that's his absolute favorite thing to talk about.
Yes. Pour with vigor.
Exactly. I was expecting all of that. Some of the yeast stuff was even more in depth than I was anticipating. We had to learn every kind of infection that you could see. You had to learn the shapes and all that. So, I mean, some of that was more intense than I was expecting, but overall, like I said, I kind of knew what to expect because I'd talked to a lot of people. But those things were a little bit surprising. I was also a little bit surprised of all the people that we got to meet and all the stories that we got to hear, just like the guest speakers.
Yeah.
But, for the most part, it was pretty much what I was expecting because I did so much research before I went out there.
Sure. Well, good for you. I mean, yeah, that's awesome. So that kind of leads me to the next thing. And I always feel like, I don't know why I feel so weird when I use the word networking. But I think it can kind of come off as like a corny kind of sounding thing. But I think one of the things that I never realized when I was in college, and only started realizing it later, is like there's value to the people of having relationships with other people in the industry.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the reasons why I'm a little bit allergic to the idea of, quote unquote networking is I don't like the salesperson persona can be a little much for me.
Yeah.
Like, especially when like you're not even in the workplace, you're not even the same industry, and they're still selling. That's that one that's really challenging for me. And sometimes I connect that idea of networking. But I mean, do you feel as if that the experience at UC Davis kind of built up that professional network on the brewing side for you some?
I think it made it easier for me to be able to feel confident talking to other people about brewing.
Sure.
And I do know a lot of people from my program that are in different places across the United States now as well. Yeah. And so I absolutely feel like it was beneficial because I could call up quite a few of the people that I went to school with, and they would be able to like answer questions or help me out, or
it's
whatever.
So valuable. It's so valuable. I've got 3-4 people that when stuff comes up, or pardon me, or if I'm trying a new ingredient, I'm trying a new process, I'm always hitting up my people that I know that are doing things, that you can get that hive mind working on something, and it's just so valuable. It's just so valuable.
I was talking to Ryan today, and he said, yeah, I had to call up Adam yesterday so he could tell me. I was like, it is. You get these people that you trust, and they make good beer and they have good processes, and you just know that they'll have the right answer for you. And if they don't have it, they'll know somebody that has it for you. Sure.
Yeah, it was funny because he was hitting me up about that. We use that dry hop doser. Mm-hmm. Like it straps right on top of the tank and everything. You can purge it. It's pressurizable. And he asked me one simple question, and I think I sent him 7 texts and a link to a video. Of course, my own video, right? But I mean, like, I always feel a little bit weird doing that for people, but also I really want somebody to understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's not like I'm just sending out, my own videos to people randomly. Yeah. Like, oh, hey, grandma, hope you had a good day. Here's how we dry hop.
Well, I will tell you, we got a new packaging guy, and he is a real go-getter. He's done a lot for us, and he was telling us all about these videos he's been watching on YouTube about brewing and all these experiences. And Ryan's like, is that Adam Makes Beer? And he's like, yeah, I think it is. It's like, that is hilarious. I love this.
That's cool. One of the things that's been really nice about doing this is, I did teach for 10 years. I did teach some university level courses for brewing. And I tell you what, this is my favorite angle on what I'm doing, because I love to teach, and it keeps me hungry and learning and trying new things. It gets me talking to people that I probably like. If I didn't do this channel, you and I wouldn't be talking beer tonight. Like at some point in the future, like we might, but like, I need to talk to people, and I have to schedule it. And so it's just really cool, and it lets me know like the things that I have to learn. And because, a friend of mine just hit me up, and he was questioning some of the, he was digging into some of the water stuff that I was talking about. And he was like, well, I'm not sure if that's like completely correct. And he sent me some stuff. So I've got more stuff to do, and I'm probably going to send an email to John Palmer and ask him like, hey, I'm doing this with my water. Am I jacked up? You know what I mean? So, but yeah.
I think that's the fun thing about this industry too, is like, if you want to keep learning, you absolutely can. There's new processes that come out all the time. Even learning from like the old books and the old processes, like there is so much information that you could get, and everyone is really free with it. Like this worked for me, this didn't work for me. I mean, I went to CBC this year as well. And just hearing things like from Vinny about how they're doing different kinds of hop products now. And it's like, there's just always so many new things that you could try if you are willing to research it and get out there and try it.
Sure. They did, and people, the 18 people that are watching right now may be tired of me talking about this episode, but if you have not listened to the interview that they did on Craft Beer and Brewing, that podcast, have you ever listened to that podcast before? They did. They've done a follow-up in the meantime, but they did one with Vinny and a couple other high-level ballers that I can't ever remember their name, but they're high-level ballers. They don't need the ego stroke of me remembering their name. But on West Coast IPA, and it was probably an hour and a half, 2 hour show on producing West Coast IPA, and it was amazing. Like super. Oh, I'm telling you, it's one to put at the top of your list, because to be able to hear somebody like Vinny, like you're talking about, the confidence, whether he's talking hop products or specifically things that they're doing with West Coast IPA right now. I've been trading emails with him. I am hoping to maybe in August or September to be interviewing him. I want to talk lager with him, because I feel like everybody talks IPA with him. And I'm such a lager nerd. I want to talk to him about his pills. His pills are delicious. STS pills is one of my favorite things to drink when I was out there. Yes. Now, do they run multiple lagers around there, or no? Or is it really just STS? That was the one that I saw mostly in like the grocery stores. Yeah. I did a couple tours there. We did one for school, and then I had my dad and brother actually came out and visited. So we went to their Windsor location and their Santa Rosa location and got to try a bunch of different stuff while we were there too. So it was really fun. I actually got to be out there during Pliny the Younger too, because that comes out in January. So that was a really fun experience. That's wild. Stood in line for 2 hours. I'll tell you, the best thing that I saw while I was there, though, these little girls were selling Girl Scout cookies in this line of like hundreds of drunk people. These girls have it going on. They know exactly what they're doing. Yeah, I like that. So I had the good fortune, this was probably back in 2013, 2014. I went out and did podcasts with the Brewing Network. So me and a couple of my buddies flew out to California, and Justin, the main guy there at the Brewing Network, he's well connected with the local guys. So we got a tour of Lagunitas with Jeremy Marshall, and then he took us over to Russian River, and Vinny came out. Vinny had just got done working like a 10-hour shift, like on the bottling line. He came out, and it wasn't a situation where he's just wanting to have a beer. He had a small pour of his pale ale, and he sat there for 90 minutes and answered the same questions that everybody's been asking him for the last 15 years. And such a kind man. And really, 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 just a nice guy. And I just love, there's a few things that I love about him, but I just love when you listen to, if you do get a chance, check that interview out with him, because I just love listening to somebody who, for me, is like one of those Mount Rushmore type characters when it comes to the American scene. I love listening to him being hungry and like just wanting to get better. You know what I mean? And like, I just love that. I love it. He's been in the industry a long time to still have that drive to keep doing things. Changing things. And he doesn't just do it for him. He does it and then shares it with everybody else too. Like, sure. Well, and that's like he's just making his brand better. He wants to make the industry better, which is nice. Yes, exactly. And you know, I was looking at it because when I was trying to think, well, do I want to talk to him? You know, if I do get him on, do I want to talk IPA? And I was realizing so much of this stuff is him talking hoppy beers, and of course, you know, I mean, you know, he knows what he's talking about, right? Makes great hoppy beer. But like, I mean, he's patient, and there's a lot of stuff. He has a fair amount of stuff out there. So I mean, he's talking to people regularly. So it's not just like, you know, he gets 1 or 2 requests a year to be talking to people, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
well, and he still makes time to be at all of his events too. Like when I was standing in line for 2 hours to go try Pliny the Younger, him and his wife were walking around to everybody in the line, shaking hands, you know, thanking people for being there. Like he does a lot for his brand as well as doing all the interviews and stuff. So,
and I think he has the understanding of. When I talk to my wife about what I'm doing with the channel, like the interesting thing is to me is like the diehard people that watch all my stuff, they like the content and they like the information, but they like me.
Yeah,
like they like a person, right? Like, and that sounds weird. Like
no,
they like me, but they connect with the person. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
that's actually like, and I mean that's really, I mean that's what you're in some ways. Yeah, I want to. I love it when I get messages. I got a message from a brewery owner who had a brewer. They were getting ready to open. The brewer left, and they had to start making beer, and so he just started watching my videos, and he was able to hack his way through it. Yeah. Like that's great, because that guy's got a lot of they've got a lot of money on the line. You know Absolutely. What I mean? And I feel like there should be free stuff out here. Like, and this is one of the things I don't understand. And thankfully, I don't have a big enough platform that anyone would ever care. But how does the Brewers Association not have free instructional YouTube videos?
Yep.
And because, and not on your own platform. I'm sorry, Brewers Association. All the talks that you have on your website are impossible to find. It's super difficult. It's very, very hard to find information. Have a YouTube channel, or don't, because it might benefit me if you don't. But have a YouTube channel that actually shows people in real time how to handle chemical, how a pub brewer can clean and sanitize a tank safely. And you can do those things generally. You can say, like I say, use your chemical suppliers recommendations for this, for time, temperature, duration, concentration. What, like, so you don't have to put yourself on the hook from a legality standpoint, but this industry is dying to have somebody say, hey, this is how you can do this. Right. And so anyway, and then I get a little preachy, but but anyways, that stuff drives me crazy. But anyways, yeah, I mean, that's that. I think I get wound up about once a live stream. And so hopefully that's the only time where I go a little bit over the line. One of the things I did want to point out from the chat, which was a comment that I enjoyed. Jamie Tripp, long time listener, Jamie Tripp. Jenny, you are an inspiration to anyone who is looking to make a change at any point. Good on you. When you were talking about making your move into the brewing industry. Very cool stuff. Jamie's a good dude. He is opening a brewery of his own as we speak. So yeah, some cool stuff there. But before we start talking about making tart fruited beer, is there any other big picture things or anything else that you would just like to convey about that experience at Davis?
I mean, I will be forever grateful that I went, I think, is my biggest thing. I don't think that I would have had the confidence to go in and get the job that I have without it. Yep. I would have had to definitely.
We'll see if she can jump back in. Hey,
can you see me again?
I gotcha.
I have no idea. Home internet is not the best, obviously.
Well, I mean, more than anything, I was when I could also tell that I've been doing this for a little over a year because I did not start to just sweat profusely, because that's what used to happen all the time. I never knew how to actually make the stream start or whatever, and like I was always very tense. So I'm far more far more relaxed. I'm like, you know what? This will work itself out, and it did, and it did. What were we chatting about before we froze up?
We were just saying like anything else that I had.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I was really glad that I did what I did, mostly because I started so late. So it's like I felt confident being able to go in and actually apply for a brewer's job instead of feeling like I didn't have the knowledge that I needed to go in and do that. So I'm going to be forever grateful for going. I don't think it has to be everybody's process. I think that you can absolutely go in, especially like under you. Every time I talk to you, you've learned a new process. You keep going in and you know all the science behind it. Like if you have a good teacher to go in and teach you all that stuff, I think it's absolutely possible to go in and become a brewer without having to have any kind of formal education. But I think that for me, it's like it gave me that confidence to go in and know that if I did something, I was going to be able to fix it or have that background. So I think
that's an interesting angle, and because I didn't really see that, because I was thinking on such a practical plane with it. But I think that's really interesting that you mentioned that, you know, actually one of the big things just was that level of confidence, walking into that interview and talking to somebody and saying, yeah, hey, I did this.
Absolutely. Being able to go in and have the questions too. Like if I would have went into the interview with Scott and been like, oh, well, I homebrewed. I wouldn't have even known what kind of questions to ask him. Like,
sure.
And then when he asked me questions, I don't know that I would have had the right answers either. So
it
just lets you know. And like I said earlier, it's like, I wanted people to know I was serious about it. Like it wasn't a whim. It wasn't something I just kind of decided this sounds like fun. Like I want to tell people I make beer, kind of like
yeah.
So
and it's a commitment difference too, because you know if it's something, you know, I don't know, like for me, one of my old assistants who's now brewing over at Urban Artifact, like. She worked with me. We have had and have a great relationship. And then it's always one of those things where it's like, well, do you like it because we get along great?
Yeah.
Or is this going to be your career?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And now she's out there, you know, she's killing it over at Urban, and she's out there doing it, and I'm very proud and everything like that. But yeah.
I think I met her at the Ohio Craft Brewers conference that we had in Cincinnati like 2 years ago.
Okay, yeah. Oh yeah. She is, if there is did you ever watch the show Parks and Rec?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. So if Leslie Knope and a Care Bear had a baby, that is she radiates joy. And we played so well. Our personalities played so well off each other. You met Josh. We would just constantly try to get a reaction out of him, and he's very stoic.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was like two children trying to compete for you know the authority figures. Even though he was the junior most person in the brewery. We're like, hey Josh, you think this is funny? But yeah. So but she's a sweetheart.
Having people like that you work with absolutely makes going into work even better.
Well, and you know, the first time Ryan came over, it was because we brewed Sip Trip 1 at our place, and I had never met Ryan before, and this collab was set up by other. I don't know, I didn't know anybody. I think Ryan might be the first brewer that I met in Cincinnati.
Yeah,
and he came over, and it was me, Josh, and Maggie. We're just doing our thing. And that was one of the big compliments that he gave me after that. He was just like, you know, coming in there and seeing the team you had and the way you communicated, and like you guys were having fun, you were working hard, and people were learning and they were asking questions. It was fun. And honestly, like probably that year and a half, that 18 months that I had with the two of them it's going to be the best, it'll be the best thing that I'll ever have from a management position. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
nice.
it wasn't just the workers, you know, it wasn't this that they could just come in and ball out like on the work side, you know, but like even the personalities clicked. It's like, this is stupid. How can this be this good, right? So it's one of those things you have to appreciate in the moment. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you feel as if you got any value out of the video, please like and subscribe. There are also other videos that you can watch. They're gonna maybe be over here or over here. Appreciate you watching.